website under meetings, /meetings at the end of that. So here we are. Thank you so much, Tim and Greg, for joining us. I think everyone knows you both. It knows about you anyway. Tim's leadership of the Hamilton County Democratic Party was stellar and long. And it just to hold that rudder that long, you are a hero in the Southwest Ohio world, Tim, to do that. Or you were crazy, or both, to do
combination thereof.
Yeah, right. All the political work that took, and also with the Board of Elections. Greg has done so many things for the city. Is currently a council member and as a candidate, but he's here not so much as a candidate now as giving us the from inside City Hall about issue 1. We are unsure about issue 1 as a activist group. And I did write the issues here. If either Tim or Greg, if you want to refer to that, we can go back to it. But I'd rather open this up to the, but if you want to, I can keep this on the screen or put it back anytime. But I'd rather have you speak from your experience, from your heart, what you're hearing. I know you're well connected through our city. So issue 1 and 2 are little mystery babies for us. Tim, would you begin sharing what you've heard?
I'm happy to start. And Richard, thank you very much for inviting me, although I know that was Landsman's fault.
He was a good referral from Greg for you to invite.
Let me go back to 1974, because that was an example of how the Democratic Party could use the successor designate certificate. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, when a member of council is sworn in, one of the first things they are supposed to do is fill out a successor designate with one or more members of council on it. And whoever is on that successor designate certificate gets to choose who replaces the member of council if for some reason they leave council. In 1974, Tom Luken was elected in one of the Watergate special elections against Bill Gradison. And the Democratic Party, all of the Democrats on council were on Tom Luken's successor designate certificate. They agreed, under the urging of both Sacco Wethe and Sid Weil, to allow the precinct executives to vote on who should take Tom Luken's place. And there were hundreds of people who showed up at the Alms Hotel to vote in what was a close race between Jim Sissel and Dave Mann, were the two leading candidates. And Jim Sissel at that time was a Democrat. Unfortunately, like 2 days before that big meeting was supposed to take place, Jerry Springer got in trouble with his unwisely written checks. So all of a sudden there were 2 vacancies on council, but that night only one was to be selected, and Sissel was the choice. And the members of council who held the successor designate certificate went along with a grassroots selection by the Democratic Party as to who would take Luken's seat. That was a great way for the successor designate certificate to work, but it took Democrats working together to do that. Unfortunately, in more recent years, that practice has fallen apart, although another great example of it was when PG was the only holder of Tamaya Denard's successor designate certificate.
Yeah.
He made a brilliant selection when he brought Jan Michelle Lemon Kearney in to take that seat. It was terrific. What's happened since then is, because of the indictments of 2 more members of council, one of which I don't think is a valid indictment, and I'm very hopeful that PG is going to be all right, although it's going to be a long haul. You had a Republican probate court judge picking who would take one Republican and one Democratic seat on city council. And as a result, we got 2 more Republicans on council. And I say all of that by way of history, because both 1 and 2 deal with the successor designate certificates. 2 deals with much more than that. To the extent that they are the same, and Greg, you might want to jump in on any of this. 1 and 2 both say that once a member of council is indicted for a felony crime related to the performance of his or her duty on council, they can't change their successor designate. I don't have a problem with that concept. In fact, I like the idea that it's going to use the successor designate certificate, because it ought to give the party who that member came from the opportunity to play a role in seeing who takes that seat, even on the interim basis that both Steve Gooden and Liz Keating have taken a position. 1 only deals with that and allows the city solicitor's office to appoint a special prosecutor to act to remove the indicted member from council, much in the way that the county prosecutor can do that today. I'd rather see a special prosecutor appointed by the city solicitor deal with a city council member rather than have the Republican County Prosecutor's Office running that show.
Yes.
And by the way, issue 1 was largely the creation of Chris Smitherman. Issue 2 was largely the creation of Betsy Sunderman. Issue 2 has a lot more in it. It gets a little complicated. It does allow for 7 members of council to vote to remove a member of council who has been indicted. Still, as long as that member of council is smart enough to act while the successor designate is still in place, his or her designates get to choose their successor. And I think that's the best way for this to work. It also allows for the city potentially, because in both cases where a member of council is removed on an interim basis, they're entitled to continue to get their paycheck because they haven't been convicted. And frankly, as much as that may irk some people, I think that's the way it should be, because they're still not guilty. And that includes both Pastor and PG are not guilty as things stand today. If they are convicted and issue 2 passes, the city would have a right to go back and attempt to recover what they have been paid during that interim period of time. The one other thing that issue 2 also does is it requires any new member of council to, within 60 days of them becoming a member of council, undergo ethics training approved by the Ohio Ethics Commission. And I think that's a very good thing for any member of council to do, new and old, as we've seen during the past year.
Pardon me, Tim, is that legitimate training, not sort of fluff, or do you know?
The Ohio Ethics Commission does a pretty darn good job.
Okay.
We just had the director of the Ohio Ethics Commission come and talk to those of us who are currently serving on the Economic Development Review Panel, trying to design some other methods of increasing the ethics in the development process in City Hall. And he was terrific with some very good ideas that we may be working with.
Yeah, good. Terrific. Good. Let's pause now inside City Hall now. Greg, you are
well, thank you. Yeah.
You can tell us from what's happening, how it occurred, how it's happening. And I think when we spoke on the phone, you said some of those details were not really clear. You hadn't studied it real closely yet. But what do you think?
I mean, as I thought Tim would do the best job.
Thank you. Yes.
When Richard asked, who could talk on issues 1 and 2, I thought, well, Tim would be perfect because of who Tim is, and the fact that he's been doing this work for a long time as a lawyer and as a party leader, and that was incredibly helpful, and hopefully that made the 2 issues a little clearer for folks. So thanks to Tim for that. I'm happy to sort of add perspective, as part of questions. I guess I would just say that the ethics training is hugely important, and we're going to pursue that as an ordinance, whether this passes or not, because most of us believe everyone needs to be better trained. So members of council, their staff, members of the administration, the mayor, folks involved at City Hall need to be taking what is absolutely very good training that the Ohio Ethics Commission does. So that is an ordinance that we will pass in the next month or so. It doesn't need to be in the charter. So that's one. The successor designee, I have the entire, any Democrat. That was something that as part of the nomination, in order to get the endorsement, we all agreed to say, hey, look, if we step down for any reason, then and all of the other Democrats would be part of making that decision together, and maybe they kick it to the CDC, the precinct execs. And I agree with Tim that is the most ideal way to do this, and I think the most transparent and honest. I think that's what would give people real more faith. So I kept all of the Democrats. I probably need to update my successor designee, but that was important to me. So I hope people continue to do that, because I think Tim is right. And I do think the party should go further and say, not only should it be the members of your party, but with engagement from the CDC, from precinct execs, from folks within the party. So that, to me, is something we should do. But again, does not have to be in the charter. And that part wouldn't be. The question is should somebody be able to change their successor designee after they've been indicted on a federal crime related to their job? And yeah, again, like Tim, I don't have any issue with that either. In terms of whether or not it's a special prosecutor removing the person, or 7 members of council, or the probate judge, I'm just having a hard time, thinking that it matters as much as everything else, meaning that was never our biggest issue. Our big issue has to do with trust and transparency, and the way in which we work together, and all of that is going to require a huge cultural shift at City Hall, one which I hope to help lead, and big reforms, including financial disclosure requirements that say, hey, you have to disclose everything you get immediately, or at least from those who do business with the city, to having real leadership around ethics and good government, to audits of these development deals, a whole host of reforms. Those are our big issues. How we ended up replacing these folks weren't the biggest issues. That's debatable. That's just sort of how I remember it. I remember thinking we have a lot of serious issues.
Yeah.
How we removed and replaced these folks was not the biggest issue we faced. And so I'm not sure that either one will fundamentally improve what's happening at City Hall. However, they are on the ballot. What I said to Richard was, I'm not sure what I'll do yet. I'm not sure if I were to vote for one of them, it would be issue 1. The second one is much broader, as Tim said, and would include other offenses. And if you start thinking about things that could happen, or it could really criminalize all kinds of stuff in a way that would be, and efforts that would be simply attempting to remove somebody. And that's not good. But I'm not sure.
Let me pause you one moment here, Greg. I'd like thank you for revealing where you are and still looking at that. What about you, Tim, if you don't mind sharing where you're leaning, or what you're thinking about your own stand for these two, and then we'll open up for questions to the two of you.
In all honesty, I'm probably inclined to vote for both of these right now, but I'm going to be thinking a lot about these over the course of between now and Election Day, in part because of the work on the Economic Development Review Panel, which actually has a public hearing on this Friday. And anybody is able to zoom in on that and offer their thoughts on that issue. And I hope some of you might consider
good.
doing that
Could you
Friday
put
at 1 o'clock.
Could you put any details about that, Tim, into the chat?
Because I'm not good at operating chat.
Sure. Or
I
who should
can
we
tell you
contact?
that
Who
it's-
should we
that it's on
contact?
It is on the front page of the City of Cincinnati
I'll get it for you
website
too.
right
I can
now.
get it to you too.
Okay, thank you. Front page of City of Cincinnati.
By the way,
But if you don't mind, Greg, if you could
Yeah.
pick that off or put it
I
in the chat
voted-
or send it to me.
I voted for both to go on the ballot because I thought that voters had the right, deserved to make a decision about this. I just haven't personally made up my mind what I'll do
Yeah.
as a voter. If I were to support one, it would be one,
Yeah,
but I'm not sure I will.
great. I hear you. Good. Okay.
All of
now-
the council members voted yes on both 1 and 2,
Both?
except for Chris Seelbach, who voted no on 1.
Because
And I'm
I
not
think
sure
he
what
vo-
prompted that.
I think he voted no on both, Tim, because of the change in the successor designee. And I see it in the chat. It's a question like, what's so wrong with that? I think it's, Marty, was that you? Or you just, okay. Somebody asked, yeah, this is not my position. I'm just, the argument is it's the appearance of impropriety, meaning someone's been indicted. You know, why are they changing their designee? It seems suspect, and it raises eyebrows and further erodes trust is the argument against that.
Right.
Especially if the party has been successful in convincing all of their candidates to name all of the other elected Democrats on their successor designate. And something happens and all of a sudden the member decides to take it down to one person on their successor designate certificate.
Right.
Yeah. Very weird. Yeah,
Good.
I agree.
Okay, good. Thanks for following chat. But let's ask questions in person if you wish to use the Zoom hands up that we're practicing that. It's either under reactions or under participants or maybe some other weird place it's hidden in there. But we're trying to practice that for some big groups like the forum, the mayor's forum coming up on Thursday. Marty, please ask or make a comment to our guests.
Okay, so I got deeply lost trying to figure out what these ballot initiatives were about. And one thing I noticed was that the ballot language, and I don't know whether to trust the ballot language, but anyway, the ballot language for issue 1 says that if someone is indicted or has a criminal complaint
Exactly.
for misbehavior, to me that's objectionable because can't just about anybody file a criminal complaint? I mean, that's not enough to start this whole process rolling of a special prosecutor and all this.
You know, Marty, I'll let Tim, as he's looking at it, confirm whether that's true or not. I do remember during the debate that there were all kinds of questions that, were raised from me in terms of how this could be weaponized. Both of these things. Do I think you should change your successor designee? No. Do I believe everyone needs to have ethics training? Yes. Those are two things that we can resolve without a charter amendment. And if these fail, then that's something I'll pick up. The training I'm doing no matter what. The removal piece, both have language. One is better than two, but both have language that I think could weaponize this removal thing. in a climate where everything is being weaponized and politicized and criminalized. And again, our big issue was that we got to a place where we had to talk about suspending or removing. It wasn't, did it work out as well as people wanted it to? No. And was it super clean? No. But removing folks is not at the heart of what we need to fix at City Hall. And my worry is that by jumping to this as being the big fix, one, it's not going to fix the things that need to be fixed. And two, it could, I think your point, which is, how couldn't this become a mechanism for people to go after folks they don't like and have them removed from office?
Yeah. What's your view, Tim?
Well, when I read the criminal complaint language, I assumed, which sometimes is dangerous, that was referring to a criminal complaint filed by the prosecutor or the solicitor in municipal court, which is an appropriate way to do that. If it's defined as being somebody going to the police station and filing a criminal complaint, if that's what it means, that's something entirely different and dangerous.
However, I would say, yes, that's true. But if you have a judge or a prosecutor who is overly political, and I know too.
We don't now?
You get the criminal complaint you're looking for, and all of a sudden a special prosecutor is triggered, and we're off to the races. Instead of helping people, we're dealing with this removal issue.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who is next? Either, if you know how to put up the Zoom hand, please do. If not, just put your hand up and
Can I just follow up though on
well,
that?
I'd like to leave time for some others if you don't mind, Marty. And if nobody acts, you're ready to go. But I want to give as many people a chance as they can. Good. Thank you. Sorry to be curt. Who's next with a question for our guests? Yes, Kurt. Thanks.
I put my questions in the chat before, but first off, the situation we had with Pastor and PG was not a removal from office. It was a suspension, which, if I understand, the state law requires the probate judge to designate their temporary replacement. Do issue 1 or issue 2 have any way to change that other than removal?
Both do. I believe both. Then, Tim, you correct me if I'm wrong, but both. It's suspension or removal. Again, the best way to think about it, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, is one says, look, we're going to have a special prosecutor that's designated by or appointed by the solicitor. So stay in house. And if they say suspend or remove the person, then that's what happens. And issue 2 says 7 members of council can make that decision.
Well, my question is more if they're suspended rather than removed. My understanding is state law does not allow the designated successor to make that designation. It's left exclusively to the probate judge. And does issue 1 do have any ability to even try and change that? And do they actually have language that would change that? I didn't see it. So.
What's your thinking, Tim?
I think Kurt may have a very valid point there. I think there is an attempt to try and preserve the successor designate meaning and allow that to operate. But if we are stuck with state law as it's currently written, clearly the probate court judge is going to do that. And as we've just seen, the probate court judge is going to appoint people of his own party.
Yeah. Wow. Good. Who's next? My thinking is that they're so complicated. How many are going to vote for this or vote for it for or against it with any understanding of it, and including me, although I'm gaining ground now of understanding, and we'll listen to this recording again. But I'm also influenced by the point that, Greg, some of these things might be you'll be bringing some of these things up into council anyway, some of the things like the ethics and all. And so therefore, I don't really have to vote for this in order to get some of the pieces of it that might be most important. So therefore, I'd lean maybe at this point, still early, to do that. Who's going to vote for it, and will they have any idea what they're voting for?
I could be wrong, but my sense is that people will go in and think, I'm happy to vote for either one because I'm so disgusted by what happened. And if this is part of the reform, I'd like to be part of the reform. But, maybe folks see, what I'm currently looking at, which is, the goal is to get to a point where this is never needed again. Right. I mean, this again, and my worry, and this is really based on politics and how it's become, that it is, these things get weaponized very quickly.
Yeah.
And so.
Right. Antoinette.
Yes, thank you. So this really follows on what you've been talking about. As ordinary citizens and as activists who try to do voter education, is it worth it on our part to try to educate voters as to what these two issues are about? Or is there someone else that, what role is the League of Women Voters or the Democratic Party or, other groups doing to help people understand these?
I would think the league will do what it does, which is to lay it out. And, I think that will be, I'll read that, probably let that be my final decision is how my takeaway from what the league writes, because I think they do such a good job, honestly, and clearly laying something out. I don't think the Democratic Party will weigh in. I would be surprised. But I do think, I think this is an educational one, which is, clarify it. And I, Richard, I think the way what you pulled out and posted, I think is helpful. And I do think people would benefit from additional education.
Yeah. Tim, yeah.
Two things. First of all, a great frustration for this kind of an election, because you asked the question about how many people are going to vote. How many people are going to vote for anything on May 4th? It's going to be a relatively small, frankly, a very small minority, even though they are determining the two people who are going to be the candidates for mayor in November. It's going to be a very low, frustratingly low turnout for those of us who care about voter turnout issues. The other thing to keep in mind is to the extent that
of our budget.
Right. The other thing to keep in mind is that to the extent there may be some interchange between 1 and 2 where they don't agree with one another, and there can be an argument about that.
Yeah.
If they both pass, it's the one that passes with the highest number of votes that will become effective.
Interesting. Julie, you're next.
Yeah, my question, I'm also very concerned that huge items of consequence for the city are going to be decided by a tiny minority of votes.
Oh, so sad.
Oh, it's sickening. And my concern is I contacted the League of Women Voters. I may be mistaken, but I don't think they're putting out a tabloid for the primary. Right. And that really worries me. So my question is, how in the world can we make sure that whatever the result is, no probate judge of the opposing party gets to appoint a council member of the other party rather than the one of the suspended council member? That's all I care about, frankly. The rest of this feels to me like it needs the work that Tim is describing is going to happen on Friday. I will join that meeting. But I want to make sure that the way these two, Betsy and whatever his name, Gooden is, cannot ever happen again. That is wrong.
Just to
Keating.
correct that,
Keating.
Betsy didn't happen that way. Liz Keating did.
Oh,
Betsy succeeded Amy Murray.
okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank
Yes,
you.
that's right.
Yep. Yeah.
But you
Good.
know, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So any comment there? We're getting down as much as this is so useful. And it's not like we don't think you're valuable. It's just that we have a big agenda. And one of the successes for doing this week after week after week is that our meetings begin on time and end on time. And we have a big agenda still to come. So please don't take it as a personal insult. But I wanted to see, Marty, I cut you off there, but I got a few more questions in. But here's another little corner of the conversation. If you could ask something briefly that you were going to follow up with.
Maybe we could ask the league to do more, but they do have a write-up under 411.org, which is their thing, but I didn't find it helpful. And
Okay.
the other thing I wanted to say before was that issue 1 in the ballot language, which I'm not sure the ballot language really represents what's actually
Yeah.
in the proposal, but the ballot language for issue 1 says that about just a criminal complaint. Issue 2 only talks about an indictment. So
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we learned some. Okay, we're kind of off the hump anyway, Tim and and Greg. We were kind of stuck at 0.0. And now we might not be at 0.100, but we're up at 0.23 maybe, or something like that in our journey.
Can I just say one last thing at the
Oh,
end?
definitely.
It felt like when we were having this debate in council, I thought to myself, this is not what the people in our neighborhoods, who pay taxes,
Yeah.
Who do business, who work in the city of Cincinnati are thinking about or caring about. They care about a well-run city, a city that they can trust, and they want a whole host of things fixed.
Yeah.
What the insiders cared about was how, all this played out after the indictments. And it feels like very much inside baseball stuff.
Yeah. Which again undermines the trust or the belief that the city and its government is caring for what the people really need.
Yeah.
They don't need these issues, actually, especially compared to all the other things that they need. Thank you both very much. This was so helpful. You really moved it for us, and it's an honor having you here. And of course, you're coming back anytime you wish. And if it's all right with you, when we need some insights again, we'll reach out and ask for your help.
Happy to help, Richard. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah,
You guys are awesome. So good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Be well.
Bye. Yeah, good. And I'm going to now, pardon me, one thing, just to take care of the logistics here. I'm now going to end the